Welcome to the second episode of Doing Abroad with Options. And again, we have UNiSA with us, talking about construction management and what you can expect with opportunities in Australia and beyond, as well as here in Kenya, in terms of your future in construction management. So we touched a little bit about what the course structure looks like, what you can expect in terms of the coursework in itself, what sort of skills and transferable sort of knowledge you could have once you study in UNiSA, and as well as your life beyond that when you start your job. And this episode, we will actually be talking more about the course in itself, the program itself in UNiSA, so that you can actually know what to expect when you start your studies in Australia with respect to construction management. So a little bit maybe from you, a little bit about a discussion and a bit of specifics about the actual program and what they can expect in terms of coursework and the course structure when studying construction management.
Okay, so we have a 4-year construction management with honours degree, and that consists of 3 years of core courses where we develop skills in construction management, quantity surveying, costing a building, scheduling a building's development, and in the application of standards and regulations to building design and to construction processes. Courses contain content on things such as construction materials, how we communicate in the construction world, how to draw joints in and structural frames, some study in actual structural design, and I teach fire technology and building surveying. So building surveying is the application of standards and codes to design and construction, and fire technology looks at the provision of fire safety systems in buildings.
You know, what caught my attention is the language, the construction language. Is it different? Is it a different language that someone needs to learn?
It is. There's a bit of jargon applied.
Yeah.
So nothing to be afraid of, but it does help to get the terms. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that it goes along with a bit of a culture when you're in an industry that you love.
Yeah.
You know, that sharing of jargon is part of that culture, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that would be really good. I mean, for maybe international students who may not feel that the language barrier might be there and just, you know, maybe not fully understanding each other and what we mean. And I guess that would really be a good, unique selling point for UNiSA on that point, because by the time you're done with your course, when you get into the job market, you already know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So you're not left out.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because it's a focus of ours to welcome and include our international students, and we're aware that we all have colloquialisms and communication, you know, ways that we talk about things. So we try to make sure that we're being inclusive in all of our communication.
Right. So you'll be in the know about the words and the terms that they use in the construction industry before you're even done with uni. And I think that's half the job done. Just being able to communicate with someone is very important. Yeah. So the next thing, maybe you could highlight a little bit about the features of the curriculum and what are some of the learning outcomes that you test students on when they're doing the course.
So students will develop skills in the application of software, in using different platforms to design and develop systems for costing and managing and scheduling the construction of buildings.
Right.
And
few other fun ones.
A few other fun ones. Overall, our aim for the program is to produce graduates who have a sound understanding of the construction industry, who can apply processes and tools for the development of
building or structure.
Buildings and structures.
Yeah. So maybe if you're an organized person, or you feel like you're an organized person, and these are some of the things you don't really think about when you're growing up, and you're thinking, I always seem to be the one organizing my friends to do something, or I'm always the one, the teacher always used to choose to organize a team or be the team leader. And you also happen to have an interest in construction, and maybe you don't want to wear the yellow hat very much. This would probably be the best place to fit whatever you're already good at, which is organization, and a passion in construction, right?
Right. So if I asked you, you wanted to build a building, or you wanted to build a bridge, what would your expectations be? What do you need the construction manager to take care of for you? Yeah. It's things like how long is that project going to take? What's the cost of that project? Who's controlling the cost of that project to make sure we don't have a blowout of the budget that you might hear about sometimes in the news? And the third pillar of that is quality. We want the customer to get what they want, and that needs to happen, and someone needs to control those processes, and that's the role of the construction manager. And the other underlying professions, like the contract administrator. The contract administrator is a person who outlines what they want from their contractors, and that has to be right, because at the end of the job, or at the end of the contractor's role within the development, they need to be able to say, we've got what we want, so now we can pay you your fee.
Right. Okay. So a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about how you even got into this space. Also, I'm pretty sure there's some women watching this, and this is also not predominantly a women career, some people say. Or, it's not necessarily viewed as a female-led, industry. How did you get into it?
My career has been in building surveying. That means I'm a building certifier. That means I look at the design of a building, and it would be communicated in the form of two-dimensional or three-dimensional plans and files. And I'll compare that design against the regulations and standards that we demand that our buildings meet. So that's the first part of my job, and then I'll issue an approval. You can go ahead and build your building, because it works as far as the standards go. And then the second part of the the building certifier's job is to go out on site and look at the construction and make sure that meets what the approved plans say. So you can see that my role is diverse. I'm not always in the office. I'm sometimes out on site, which is a really fun part of the job. It means that your day is never boring, and you get to look at some amazing construction happening in front of you.
But how did you get into it?
So that's the private certification, building certifier's role. I got into it in a mixed kind of way that, so often we end up going in one direction and we just kind of land in another. My original career was a health surveyor, so my first job was looking for healthy conditions in the environment, or unhealthy conditions, and taking care of those, and that included food surveillance. So I would go and look at the butcher shop and say, your process is not clean enough, you really need to take care of that problem. Right. But, so it's a long story, but that was combined. Yes, I used to close restaurants. So that was combined with the building surveyor's role, because back in those days it was just an old-fashioned way that those roles went together. Both of those are now professions, building surveying and health surveying. So I went from one to the other, and then I worked as a building inspector in a local government authority or a council. I'm not sure what your equivalent in Kenya is. Councils. Then I began some study in fire technology, just to broaden my knowledge, and ended up teaching fire technology at university. Interesting. So I keep in my contacts with industry, so that we can bring those real life problems back to our teaching all the time. I'm the chairperson of the building technical panel in our state in South Australia, and my role is to look at things that are really too hard for legislation, those issues that we can't simply answer by using legislation. So those problems come to me for consideration.
Well, I guess if you then go and study at UNiSA, you'll be studying from the best.
Yes, as I say, those connections with industry are really important, and so we strive to make sure that all of our academics maintain those in some ways. Sometimes it's being part of a industry association that looks after the profession and accreditation and those sort of things, accreditation of professionals.
All right, maybe Jackson, you can tell us a little bit about, I'm pretty sure maybe there are some programs that you have for construction management students, and what can they expect? There's some, I'm pretty sure, programs that you've collaborated with people in industry, or maybe some programs you started, some what we call clubs here, but I'm sure that in the UK they're called something different. I don't know what they're called in Australia, so maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, on how school, the students get to know each other and just connect and maybe form connections with one another. That might be helpful after uni.
Well, I'll give a quick introduction and then let Debbie really talk about it in detail, because we do have a particular club called BOSS, which stands for Building Organisation for Staff and Students, right? Yep, great. So this one, so officially it is technically a student club. That's what it comes under within the university. But it is, I mean, having seen a few of the different clubs, it is one of the slickest, most professionally run clubs. It's essentially your gateway to a job in construction management. It's an absolute must for any construction management student to get involved in. It's not compulsory, but so it's not technically a must, but I would say it is something you should not miss out on.
Right.
Because essentially they start from the very beginning, like they do barbecues and some get to know you kind of stuff. They do, what do we call it, Friday knockoff, so you can go and have a drink with some of the people in industry and your other classmates. And then I think the flagship thing that they do is a sort of a once a year boss dinner. So basically this is like a really like slick corporate event that you attend, and you see the footage and you're just like, wow, that looks like, you know, the Golden Globe Awards or the Grammys or something like this. But
an organised lot.
That's right, yeah. So it is run by the students, but it is like such a brilliant opportunity for networking and just, you know, building all those relationships in industry. I believe we had quite a few students be offered jobs at those kind of events, right?
Yes,
really? Oh, okay. You attended a few of those boss events?
Pardon?
Have you attended a few of those boss events?
Yes, I'm involved in boss,
Oh, cool. All right. So what are some of the things that, you know, you've observed in terms of the benefits that students have gotten from, you know, being part of that group?
Yeah, as Jackson alluded to, the networking between industry and students is the aim of BOSS, and so those events are all about getting those people to meet each other. And we have an industry fair where industry comes in and they set up a table and they bring some representatives. They usually bring a lot of merchandise and they bring their business cards and they're handing them out because they want to see you applying for their jobs.
Right.
Yeah, they really have a demand for skilled workers at all levels, and they are also interested in talking to undergrad students so that they can support them during their studies and begin to mould them in the shape that they want for their own roles in their companies.
Okay. You know, that's actually very important, because I imagine that as a, you know, an international student, you might find yourself in a new country. You don't know anyone. It's not like here you can call maybe someone you studied with or someone you grew up with and get a job through that, or your parent can call somebody. You're in a different country, therefore you don't know anyone. So I feel like this is a perfect opportunity for international students studying at UNiSA and doing their construction management course to meet some people in industry and form some good connections even before you're done with your course, and hopefully even get some part-time jobs from it, because I think we had a chat earlier on and you were saying that there are opportunities locally for students to even get some part-time jobs within the field that you're in. So you're not only just studying a very formidable course in Australia, but you're also getting some very good experience for you to put on your CV just when you're done. And you know, they be asking you for experience and you just came out of university. So that would be really good if you've already been getting some of that from the local council jobs, or even the government projects that you were telling me that are happening in South Australia.
You're exactly right. So our industry want our students to have some practical experience in the field. So our graduates from our fourth year need to accrue a number of hours in the industry, and we help that to happen.
So you do connect them to some of these jobs that they could be doing for their course, but also works as experience.
And I find that with students who are working in the industry or even getting voluntary experience in industry, use what they learned in university today at their work tomorrow, and the other way around. What they did at work, they at uni the next day going, oh, that was what happened yesterday at me at work. It's amazing how it happens so often.
Awesome. Oh, but then, do they end up sometimes getting jobs straight from the places they've done their placement?
Absolutely, that's almost an issue for us. So I have employers approach me and say, can you send us some final year students? And I say, no, they were taken up in the first, second or third year of their studies.
Wow.
Yes.
So they're already booked?
Yes, they're booked. They go on their placement and they don't look back.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Yeah.
That's absolutely amazing, because also that gives you an opportunity, should you get the opportunity to work in Australia or in a different country. We've talked about countries like Dubai that are experiencing a lot of big construction jobs at the moment, and maybe even in Europe, that you might find opportunities, or even come back here in Kenya and do some great things. I think that would be very amazing, but also just knowing that you're able to have the opportunity and hopefully even booked ahead of time by some companies in Australia, that would be absolutely amazing. I think it's a no-brainer at this point that you should study at UNiSA.
Work experience also gives you an opportunity to explore what you think might be your future. So you might spend 3 months as a building surveyor in a building surveyor's office and go, actually that's not for me, I'd really like to pursue the quantity surveying profession instead. So that's a really good way of determining that that's really what you want to do. Helping you make those decisions.
Fully committing.
Yeah, because there are so many options within our program.
Okay. Right, so even, sometimes students take on a course. I know this happened to me. You take on a course at the beginning and then you're like, okay, this is not me. Right? The beauty I feel so far from just listening to the two of you with construction management is that there's so many ways you could go within the construction field within itself. I mean, you could feel that you're more of a site person, and there are jobs within that one course that could lead you into more site work. And maybe you might feel like, no, I'm more of an office person. I might dabble a little bit on the side once or twice, but I prefer being in the office or working at home, whatever it is. And there would be opportunities still from that same course, and it's not really locking you into one path, as most courses do.
That's exactly it. I tell students, you'll find what you're good at and you can follow that.
Right, within the same construction field.
Yes, within the same program.
And the beauty being that there's so much job demand at the moment, so it's actually then what do you prefer to do? Because all of those options are available you almost like a menu.
Right.
During and after your degree.
Oh, that's absolutely amazing.
Good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, maybe you can tell us a little bit about some of the alumni that have gone through the programs or some construction programs within UNiSA, and particularly African students that have gone through the program, maybe some that have gone through your class. You could tell us a little bit about them and what they're doing right now, or in general, what sort of field have they then transitioned into? Yeah.
So our program is 30 years old, and it is the only accredited program in South Australia, and it has been the only program in our state for that amount of time. So all of the developments going on in our city, the construction managers and other professionals on those roles, the majority of those are alumni of our program.
Wow.
So when I call them up and say, hey, I love the look of your building, can I get my students to come and have a look? They'll say, oh yes, I'm an alumni of your program. I'd very much welcome that. So that's nice. So at a more recent level, our international students have landed roles in building surveying in my field, which makes me very happy, and because they add that new perspective to our industry.
Yeah.
Roles in local government building surveying and in quantity surveying. We have some very close relationship with quantity surveying firms in South Australia. They like to take on our undergraduates, and they'll often turn into full-time roles for those students. And construction management roles, site supervisors roles, contract administrators.
From one course.
Yes.
From doing one course, you literally have a variety of different fields you can get into.
Yeah. Actually, one just popped up in mind to me, and it kind of reiterates our point from earlier, is that I caught up with a student just recently who's actually from Options, from Kenya. So she is from a construction management background, and she's actually pursuing one of our master degrees, but she has just sort of registered herself on LinkedIn, already was on LinkedIn. She's already been headhunted for construction management roles, and she's only partway, like she's only like a couple of semesters into her degree.
Wow,
So
that's
she was,
amazing.
and she's just literally, and this is the beauty of it, because she hasn't taken up the role yet, because she
Yeah.
just wants to, study does come first. You're paying a decent amount of money for it, and you
Right,
want to
yeah.
do well.
Yeah.
But it's just such a nice thing to be able to actually have that where I'm like, wow, world is your oyster, because
Right.
you just wait till
Choose.
you're ready. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
choose, hey? Oh, that's absolutely amazing. So I guess we will keep talking about construction management, because I think there's so much more and opportunities for students here in Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, wherever you might be within the continent. You could just walk into any options office and we can literally help you connect with UNiSA, and hopefully in the next intake, you'll be there in her class.
That's right. Yeah, and if you don't mind, I might just make a quick comment just in
Yeah.
terms of employability of African students, and
Yeah.
especially because we do have a number of Kenyan students come through UNiSA, and then that I've kind of met, and I'm talking all different fields, not just construction management, but I just think from a very generic Australian employer perspective, I think African students are really, really well placed to step into industry. You guys are speaking really beautiful, fluent English. I think that always comes down, that's always a thing. I mean, verbal communication, we all know is such a thing. But I just think from what I've seen, the African students we have coming through, they're just, you're self-aware, you settle in, you really, you've got a good mindset, and so we have seen some really great success stories, and I just think there's really good potential for Kenyans and broader students across the continent to get employment in Australia.
Okay. Well, I guess you heard it here first.
Yeah.
So let's keep watching. Watch the next episode as we continue to talk to UNiSA and as we continue to talk about doing life abroad with options. Thank you very much.